I think we have a banger spicy topic to open with, which is, if people have ever watched my shows, because before we had a personal beef, I've always found Bwipo to be quite a good guest for talk shows. Now, what I'll never say is what Pleb say, which is he's the best guest. He isn't. Like, if you put him on a show without a host that can rein him in, he can be a nightmare. Like, he's the person, by the way, you know, when they have players like Perks and Yanko, where they go to be like the third commentator on the broadcast, he would be terrible at that. Because the problem is he just talks too much and his point never ends and he just cycles around and it's like he keeps getting lost in the maze again and he never finds the exit. So he's off there with the fucking Minotaur still. So basically, but he is a really interesting guy. And he definitely, by the way, I can see why he was friends with LS. He's definitely like, I won't go as far as to say he's a visionary like LS, but I do think he's got a very unique way of thinking. And I think, as you see in his game as a top lane, he's very creative and he can always find different angles. And actually, one thing he's pretty good at, some would say he goes too far with this, is in the same way as in the modern day, he's taken like a weird heel turn where he blames everyone and criticizes them. Back in the day, he's one of those people who's unbelievable at playing defense for teammates, actually, and explaining why maybe they didn't fuck up. And maybe if you'd have looked, well, for all we know, the jungler made the call there. And, you know, he was trying to get back in the game. He would always have a very different angle on things. But I actually think now it's gone to a level I don't think we can ever beat now, mate. I actually don't think it's possible. So he did an interview. It's on lcsprofiles.com. It's with that guy, Arsh Goyle, who did the famous sad rewrite of Richard Lewis's things. We call him Arspoil, but that's just my crew. It's all good. We think this guy's a bit ridiculous, but whatever. This is just a normal interview. The interview, basically, what's the joke is the interview questions, I don't know if these have been shortened, but they're just like, what was the off-season like? And then Bwipo being Bwipo, even in text, bro, you're just scrolling your finger gets tired scrolling before he's answered the question. It's like, he's recreated the text version of what it feels like to have him just give that massive 15-minute answer and you're just waiting to get in there. So, but when I go to it, holy fuck balls. So I'm just going to even type in, where would this be? There we go. So I've looked into this thing where he basically talks about the fact he's going to become a coach. And man alive, there are some really fucking bonkers ones in this one. I know even what keywords I'm going to search for. So let me see. Basically, the gist of it was, I can't actually find exactly where this was. He said something like that he could take any player and make them, what level did he say he could make them up to as players?
He basically, there was the segment where he said if he coached, he believes that within a year he could take any LCS team or LEC team and make them get a Worlds appearance.
There was another one as well, though, that I'm missing. I think someone's just fucked it up when they typed the I think they typed the headline differently than the actual quote, because I can't find it now. So I'm just going to quickly search. But I know he had one about players as well. I'm just going to quickly check this, because wherever it is, it's fire. Oh, here we go. Are you ready? The quote goes, and this is quoted, it says, I can teach any single player on this planet. By the way, he's just made the broadest possible statement. He didn't say like any Euro challenger level player, any semi-pro, any ERL player. So, right, by the way, I want to get this out, and then I want to use a coach before I jump in and go mental on him. I can teach, I can teach any single player on this planet how to be a world-class player, should they have the time and the will. Now, you could argue on the last part there, he's going to get out of jail free. And but anyway, by the way, an absurd statement. Then he said, as you said, I think any LCS, any LEC team, I could coach to, I'm getting feedback from someone's mic. I'm getting feedback from the mic, by the way.
Could be mine, yeah. Could be mine. 1 second.
Test. No, it's all good. Right, it's gone now. I think any LCS team, any LEC team, I could coach to, and this is crazy, Yamato, at minimum, a World's appearance within a year. And then he even goes, I'm sure of that. Now, bro, fuck it. Even one of these would be like contender for like craziest take of the year. He's done both back to back. So I want your thoughts as someone who actually has been a professional coach for many years now. What do you think of these two statements?
I think, you know, the main thing that I come back to with Whip is that I do think, you know, he has a good view in terms of like how he views the game. I think he's very good at finding what's important, because players get very lost in details that are not important. Okay. He's very, very good at focusing on what's important. It's like, how do we win the game? It's like, oh, I don't need to trade aggressively here. I need to just go into mid, make sure that my mid lane can push and so forth. He recognizes the patterns in the game, and he can see the game through multiple roles. Through that sense, I do think that Bwipo would be like a great coach. The extent of this statement, I can just go back to, us in Fnatic, It's like we had a player in Adam who just won like LFO, EMA Masters, did all that jazz, came into us, come into the team, still had a big ego. That's something that's a variable that you need to deal with, in terms of how you kind of maneuver around certain personalities and how you make dynamics work. I'm sure there's people that are very receptive to how Bwipo would approach things, and I think that in a certain circumstances it could work with Bwipo as a coach. But to say everyone, it's just it's too unique. Always the dynamics are always so different. It's like the main thing as a coach that I have noticed that I always have to do is that I always, regardless of what team, I've always had to adapt my approach. You are committing to 5 players in a season. You can't do your way or the highway. Sure, you bring some personality, maybe some names that fit into like the mold of things, and they kind of become, let's say, the captain that is the player that enacts your vision within the game. That happens definitely, and usually I find those players within the team. But you need to be very, very adaptable. Depending on your circumstance, because if players get sick or whatever, there's no substitutions. Like I don't have a 30-man army on the bench or something. You need to make sure that everyone thrives in that environment. And to say, just to go deeper on the absurdity of the statement, it's like, can we imagine like a rogue make a Worlds, like Bwipo comes into that team and just reshapes Rogue into a Worlds appearance, like a top 4, top 3 team in the LEC. That's how far-fetched we need to think, because that's how much of a blanket statement that is. And that doesn't even get me started on the LTA. We have like this guy's Toast. We have Dignitas. We have fucking Shopify Rebellion. It's like it gets wild very, very crazy, very, very fast. I think Bwipo could be a great coach, but I don't think there's anybody that could say the statement, no matter if it's Ohm or Tabe or whatever. If you send Tabe into these teams that you mentioned, I don't think that he is going to like make them into a world's ready team. And if they do, it's like one of the most historical things of all time. It's like, boom, you are in the conversation. You are basically like fucking Bobby Fischer of coaching, if that's like your 1 year statement, and you walk away. So definitely a little bit wild, but Bwipo, I think, as a person, he thrives on having his ego really in space, If his ego is down, he doesn't like perform or get as much out of himself as he wishes. So I get it from that side. And sometimes when you speak to him, you get the most rawest and purest thoughts. They just pour out, And as you listen to him, he's kind of arguing against himself, and then he's preparing for like the potential branching of the 3 questions that come, and then that's why his conversations tend to like drag on and continue. So it's like he's like, "How was off season?" Boom, 32 paragraphs. Usually it's like, "Oh, it's good. I was resting, spent some time with family. I got to pet my dog, had a good time." It's just Bwipo. It's very eccentric, and I do think that's a strength, and sometimes you get moments like these too, so it's fun.
This is how you know Reddit and fans love Bwipo. This could have been the most clowned on interview paragraph in the history of esports. It is actually so absurd. I can tell you right now, I don't even need to know how Bwipo would coach. What he has just said is functionally impossible, because he made it the largest possible breadth you could have, Yamato. Because think about the things he's implying. One thing people are going to miss is the two connect. In his brain, he can take any person who's alive right now and make them a world-class player. So connect the two together, Yamato. That means give him any 5 players. He'll make them all world-class. Then he'll get them to Worlds in the first year, right? There's 2 things he is implying that are mental there. One is he's not doing this intentionally. He hasn't thought this part through. He's basically just called out every other coach in the history of League of Legends as not as good as him. He doesn't think that through. Like, I'll give you an obvious example. Gyotto must suck a million fucking league dicks in this analogy, because Bwipo was on an insane $7 million super team with Gyotto and they didn't make Worlds. So by his logic, Kyoto is nowhere near Bwipo's level. Bwipo never having coached a pro team ever in his life. The worst thing is, you know what, I will already go ahead and guess, Yamato, in light of the news that we're going to get to later that they've also done, where he's sort of bringing in a top player and he's going to work with them, etc. I'll go ahead and give you a quick analogy. In Counter-Strike, we have a dedicated role called in-game leader, which is the primary shot caller of the team, because you have tactics you have to do. It's like the quarterback in the NFL. And when you do this role, though, you're not the only one who makes calls, though. You often have a secondary caller. Maybe it's like a star player, or in the CS, if you know the roles, maybe it's like a mid-round lurker. And the idea is that star can see things from his perspective. Maybe you don't. And it's not that he's overruling your call. He's just like adding to your call. Like, oh, actually, we can quickly do this. And so sometimes you let that guy have input. Or he might be watching the game because he's got the similar mindset. And every now and then he might have one call. Like, actually, I've seen something. I think we should switch up and do this at the beginning of the round. There's a classic syndrome that happens. It's happened to a million players. Sharks, Nico. It's happened recently to Twists. There are loads of these in-game these secondary callers who are star players who go, actually, you know what? I basically can be the in-game leader. Fuck it. I'm going to be the in-game leader as well. And it is notorious, Yamato. Almost none of them make it. They swap over. The 6 months go really rough. It's up and down results. Their own level drops off as a player. But what they think to them, what they have to learn eventually is they were in like a perfect spot where they were only getting to make the calls that they were confident about, or they got to listen to someone else and sort of decide, do I going to agree with that? If I don't actually have anything, I can go with what he says. But if I have something, I can overrule it. And what their mistake is, their hubris is, they don't get that on the rounds where you don't have anything as the leader. You still have to make a call. So what I think Bwipo is missing here, I would actually bet, if you think about what he did with Adam in your team, think about what he's done now in his new team with Busio, etc., and some younger players, and then you think about the fact that he's bringing in this top player that he's going to coach and work with, I would bet he sees himself as someone who's done a bit of coaching already, and he's mistaking that for the idea he's already done coaching. As though like he's already been an LEC or an LCS coach. And so he's imagining like, no, I already sort of know what I'm doing, but it'll be just with that and more. It'll be like, it might be that and less, mate. You might get by the way, you might get the self-made teammate where it's really hard to work with them. You might get the teammate that's just bad and doesn't fit in this meta. You might get the guy where psychologically that's what kills him. Nothing to do with this game, nothing to do. You might get the guy where in scrims he makes all the right decisions, then on stage he just does a brain fart and die. There's a million things can go wrong as a coach. And the notion, right, every coach I know, Yamato, would go the other way. They'd go, I could get my team to Worlds as a minimum if you give me a certain range of players. If you give me players that fit together, maybe players I've worked with. They'd have a bunch of caveats because they'd never set themselves up for the failure of like, I could basically get anyone there. Your grandma, this guy, and the guy doing the interview. Hey, work with me long enough and I'll get you to work. No. This is such a crazy statement. As I say, I actually think it's mega disrespectful because it's implying like he's the only super genius that exists in League of Legends. Everyone else is a moron. This is, by the way, this is actually quite close to some Nemesis thinking, where Nemesis will just call like every GM a fraud. It's like, they're all frauds, bro. Like, some of them are working with different budgets. You know, some of them are like min-maxing. Like, I think any blanket statement like that's usually pretty stupid. And then, as I said as well, the dumbest part is actually technically that I can make any player world class. Like, that makes me think maybe he thinks world class is a very wide bracket. To me, world class means actually you're a top player who could go to Worlds. And even then, there's players that go to Worlds that aren't that good when they get there, and maybe they're not world class. So I think already you've made that crazy. But then also, when he says at a minimum and that he's sure of it, how could you be sure of it? You have no fucking clue what you're talking about. And the minimum, that is pathetic. Because remember, there are times where there was 3 teams went to Worlds. Now there's like 4 sometimes, depending on what region you're from, if your team wins MSI and all that shit, right? Bro, the idea that it's easy to come top 3 in your region. The joke is right now, Bwipo, if you ran back the FlyQuest roster that you were in now, that you were all bragging about from Worlds, the joke is even LTA, it's now there's competition for the 4th spot there. Like, if you were 4th, you might not go. So it's just such a ludicrous comment because actually, if you're not a G2, it's actually a success to go to Worlds. That's actually the top end of the range. He's making that his minimum. That would be his baseline, is to just go to Worlds. Bro, I almost wish they would grant his wish. I wish like fucking the genie Aladdin appeared, fucking that genie with Robin Williams appeared and just granted his wish. Because since he said any players, here we go, I get to pick the players, Bwipo. I'll pick a bunch of players from the RLs and then, or Academy and ASL, and then they have to play, as we've just said, we're not giving you're not getting Cloud9, mate. No. By the way, and Cloud9 didn't make Worlds last year. What we're going to do is you're getting Dignitas. That's who they're playing for. Or they're playing for Lion Gaming. You know what I mean? Like, this is absurd. Or Disguised Toast or whatever. Like, I think it's mental, mate. And I think it just shows how much all of us like Bwipo, that we're even trying to find angles where this isn't stupid. Like, this would be laughed out the room by anyone else. And by the way, God forbid someone like Perks said something like this, mate. If he said this to submed, it would melt down. He would be clowned forever for this take. I actually think, for real, it might be the worst take I've ever heard in League of Legends esports. It's so absurd. It's so absurd.
I was like, on my end, you know, like I give him some peace because I know if we got to ask like 1 or 2 follow-up questions, I'm sure he would like clarify, you know.
Right,
like,
so you think he'd be more reasonable if we pointed some of that out?
Yeah. Like I think it's just like one of those moments. It's like he just says something off the cuff in an interview, and I think if he elaborated, would be cool. On the topic of Gelotto, bro, I'm down to believe that Bwipo would be better than Gelotto because Gelotto's had a rough track record. If I'm gonna be honest, he had like the OG Shelby stint.
I've never seen anything from Bwipo yet, though. By the way, I also hate that art part too. Coaching players is so different from coaching teams. Here's another reason it wouldn't work, Yamato. Let's say I gave him these 5 players. You can coach a team and maybe work with 1 player. There's a reason positional coaches exist. You haven't got time to coach a team and work with all 5 players. Like, that's such an absurd That's why saying here's the stupid thing. Obviously, it wouldn't make it such a sexy quote. If he'd have just added some caveats in, you have to be at a certain level, or you have to like have the right dedication. I mean, he tried to do that by saying with the skill and will, whatever, but that's such a vague statement. No, there's no way. And again, talk all the shit you want. He's been in LEC finals, mate. He's been to Worlds. Like, he's been so much. I think he's been to Worlds, hasn't he? Has he been to Worlds? Maybe he hasn't been to Worlds.
I don't think he went to Worlds.
No, I don't think
that Schalke time when he was in finals, he got fucked, you know, by
G2. Here's who else is dog shit according to Bwipo's statement. Dylan Falco. Dylan Falco didn't make Worlds with Schalke 1 year. In fact, a couple of years. How about, let's keep going. Young Buck, 6-time champion. He's had teams that have come 10th place. Yamato's been to Worlds. He's been like in semis. He also came 10th place. Everyone is shit by this logic. Literally, pick me a quote. You said it yourself. Mate, people like Om and Tarby aren't guaranteed to go to Worlds. Like, they can be in a good position. And actually, by the way, someone like Tarby is probably the best example ever of someone who can almost level up anyone. Even he's not a miracle worker. You know what I mean? Like, they're all just human. And the sad thing about this is it's just an example of where when you haven't done something, you don't know how hard it is.
Yeah,
I've known so many coaches, Bwipo, you're just talking out your ass, mate. You are just talking out of your ass.
A good example, right, is when Mithy jumped into coaching. It's like it's very natural, like in terms of being a player. He would be a
good coach. It seemed like it, like from what he did as a player.
It's like in the beginning, it's like in terms of how he was as a player, how he pushed his teammates and so forth. His transition into coaching was very hard, and he mentioned it when he was on the sector. And he's like. As a player, it was easy for me to call out my teammates, but it's very different from a coach's perspective to do so because you need to have an overarching view always. It's like in terms of your time management and in terms of where you invest energy and so forth, you can't be spontaneous. You need to be very, very structured and you need to be very careful about everything that you do because some things you can't walk back. Some things need to be done. You need to make sacrifices here and there, and sometimes you need to cut corners in order to perform. Like that balancing act it can get very, very frustrating, especially from a player side when you want perfection. And I know that Bwipo was also like a perfectionist, and when someone doesn't give you that, and maybe they're so far from it, how do you deal with that? Because I think the assumption is that certain things are going to work right away. Because Bwipo, like he has shared many times, like his theory, it's like most of the time, he said that if he coached a team, he would approach it in a way where he would be like, okay, we are not scrimming until all of these things are in place. There's so many things that we can learn outside of scrims, whether it's like our lane phase, our early game, and so forth, and like all these details in terms of what you can prepare before a game. So when you actually scrim, you play the champions you want to play, and you have the structure down, so you can actually enact that. Like that as a vision is already like really, really radical. It's hard to know if that's going to work for sure because often when you practice, you run into this problem of how valuable is the data that you have because you're basically dancing with an opponent that also brings a certain level to the table. It's like navigating that data. Usually every team out there says you scrim, and then you see your real self when you actually have stage games. And I think there is a certain level of almost naivety in thinking that everything will be like, oh, if I do it right, everything will be perfect. But it never kind of is, because things always go wrong because humans are involved.
By the way,
who the fuck is Christopher Nolan?
Here's the sad thing. I actually just want to also almost go demon mode though, Yamato, and not follow up and give him a chance to explain himself. I want to like encourage him to hype it further and go, what if you got like, what if I gave you like D+'s roster? Like, oh, I'd probably have the greatest dynasty of all time, but I'd probably win like 3 or 4 worlds and a couple of MSIs. Yeah, maybe I'd lose a first stand here and there. You know, I'm only human. And then I could probably take anyone. I could take fucking Thorin and make him fucking prime the shy. Like, yeah, what else can you do, mate? Like, fucking hell. Man alive, what the fuck? This is where, for real, I'm actually going to keep track of this now, mate, because I'm not even joking. The Bwipo I knew when I did shows with him 3-4 years ago, bro, it wasn't this unhinged. Like, he was verbose and he had some creative ideas and he liked to argue. But even when he argued, by the way, it was quite reasonable how he argued. He'd give people space and he might disagree with you, but he was actually quite good at being disagreeable, by the way. He wasn't like, pretty sure even my mate LS will rage at people sometimes and tell me, hey, who are you to tell me that? And, you know, go off into some cognitive dissonance. He was so reasonable. So I've got to say, even though I'm not making this like a statement because I can't speculate fully on that, but I'm just going to put a little asterisk here. This makes me a little bit concerned again, a bit like when he did that weird trash talk before Worlds, mate, where it seemed like there's something going on with you, mate. Like, is there a reason why you're making these like sort of wild statements? Because this doesn't just seem like pure ego and arrogance to me. This almost seems like, I don't know what it, like, again, it just seems like something's going on, mate. Is there a problem in life? Like, is there something else that isn't being addressed that's coming out as like, you're just going too far in the interview? Because like, I'm a bit alarmed by these statements. Like, do you know what I mean?
No, I understand. I think like the words thing came to mind as well, because obviously like Whip was home in my side, but running defense here, and I know that I translated through the lens of me knowing him very, very deeply, right? I'm sharing that side because I understand your side too, in terms of like interacting with the statement itself and how the community reacted to it. But I think, you know, even that segment, right, when he was like reviewing with players and in terms of how those interactions were, like those are like, you know, maybe that's like a microcosm of some of the problems that you might face, you know, when your point doesn't come across. You know, sometimes I have worked with players where for a whole year I've just tried to reframe and rephrase the same thing just until it sticks, you know. Like sometimes it just doesn't make it through, and it can be like the most frustrating thing ever. And sometimes you are dealing with a piece like that and you need to adapt to that piece if they aren't willing to adapt to you. And when that happens, that's where the coaching balance like really gets into play. That's like outside of the game knowledge, because I think often players are just too much of perfectionists. It's like every player that is like worth their salt is like, we play a really good game, 98%, we play good. The first thing they talk about when they leave the game is like, yeah, we shouldn't have dove here, you fucked up your flash, your Elise Cocoon was trash. And then it's like getting players to say anything positive about what they just did, or like to show any appreciation to the teammates, is like an exercise that takes a lot of effort. So those challenges would be fun to see them play out, you know. Like I think as an additional thing from this whole Bwipo conversation is, you know, even looking at some of the statement in terms of like the streaming of scrims, the leveling up the region and so forth. It's like, sure, the format of LTA was kind of trash, and currently they're playing BO1, so it's hard to judge FlyQuest because basically Spawn confirmed to us that Team Liquid, he believes that they won for like the LTA split because they just had Team Liquid offices in Brazil. So they just had better facilities, better place to play, better place to sleep, while everyone else was like lagging and they had to like go to the venue and the Riot offices to play. And it was like a complete mess for everybody. So it's like, I don't know what FlyQuest level is. They probably, you know, should be, you know, a very strong team. But it was also the whole conversation about streaming scrims and leveling up the region, how everyone's shit, you know, it's always very extreme. And I think the biggest, I think the tip of a point, from how I understand it from Bwipo's side, is that I think in my mind I agree with this idea that if you are the number one team in the region, you serve as an example. I think that is good ways of doing that. I think the way G2 did, it's like they shamed everybody into not canceling scrims anymore, right? I think that was a good thing. They leveled up like scrim level. They restored faith in like the solo queue ladder by setting like a standard. And G2 as a leader within the region, I think, like reflected on everybody else, because everyone else kind of took up that standard too, because in the end, obviously, you want to compete. It's like often within a region, within that sphere, you always try to reach the opponent, and you do so by copying them, but at the same time just hyper analyzing them. It happened to me when I was in Splice and we competed against G2 2016. We were kind of like a mirror version of them in a sense, with some different strengths and weaknesses, but this always happens. I think the moment Bwipo finally won the split, I think that responsibility of like being the leader in that region and being like the team that moves the region forward, I think that responsibility, maybe he took it a little bit too hard, upon himself, because suddenly it's like, oh, you won in LTA and now your responsibility is to save the West, and that's like a little bit too much, because sometimes just leading by example is like the only thing you can do. But he tried to like coach everyone at the same time, and he tried to also spread the love of how they do like their scrims and so forth to, of course, level up the region. And you could see in that scrim that they had FlyQuest versus T9 that was like a very filtered version of it. It's like people were holding back, people not saying things. And I know Nuktak and Mythi and Inspired, like they didn't fucking want to stream scrims. They think it's awkward as fuck. Those stream environments and scrim environments are very raw. And I think if people like heard some of the things that were like said off the cuff that are, of course, don't mean anything, but maybe not really PC, not really world ready, it wouldn't really, fly well. So, like even in those things, I think that the responsibility Bwipo always puts on himself is always like the most extreme version of it. Because even though he says this statement that he would take a team to Worlds, I think it's because he believes he needs to be capable of it. It's more of a reflection of what he thinks he needs to do, and anything else is a failure in his mind. And that's how I would maybe rationalize it. Because his ego needs to match what his ambition is, and anything else is a failure, All
right, take a breath. Take a breath, you
Bro,
See, that's it. See, that's air you're breathing, not copium. Fucking hell, that was insane. That was like the defense rests, Your Honor. The insanity defense. Like, fucking hell. Okay, holy shit.
We are both sitting on Whipple's shoulder, We are figuring it out,
Yes, true. No, we are. You're the angel, I'm the devil. I'm like, you fucking arrogant bastard. You think all the other coaches are shit? You fucking piece of shit. Just because you taught Adam how to lay, like, yeah, true. You're like, no.
I'm the Whipple translator, bro.
You have to believe Bwipo. You just have to know that your level would have to be, yeah, you're right in a way. You are in a way, yeah. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.